Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Connecting the Dots. Joining me today is Matthew Wood, a self-employed content writer, copywriter and editor based in Cambridge, and he's here to talk about the power of the question. Matthew, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Neil. Great to be here. I've watched your podcast a number of times now. Really enjoy hearing you speak and to a range of people. So it's brilliant to be here with you today. So thanks for having me on.
You're very kind, mate. Thank you. Yeah, you're one of my biggest fans, which is always lovely to hear. Well, maybe
that's all the writers.
Yeah, exactly. So can you start by giving us some insight into your professional background and how you got to where you are now, I suppose?
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I've been in education up until this academic year for 15 years. I was a teacher in a secondary school and became an assistant head teacher. So dealing with lots of the behaviour and pastoral issues within the school, as well as teaching. I started initially teaching as a PE teacher. So connecting with young people in that area of education is quite special in many ways, and then also taught lots in the classroom, as tends to happen when you when you take on responsibility. You tend to plug a few gaps here and there. So big background in education, and then this year there was a sense of a desire, a growing passion to do something a little bit more. We'll talk about that, I guess, as we go through. A desire to explore the creative side of my skill set and use all of the transferable communication skills and people skills that I had and have developed. And I guess the skills that you kind of fight quite hard for within education when the stakes are quite high in terms of the relational aspect of working with young people. And increasingly, there was a sense that, well, what I write and what I say resonates, and increasingly people are liking what I'm putting down and communicating. And then there was a thought of, well, actually, this could be something that could really edify, build me up, and take the next part of my career in an exciting direction. So yeah, was able to establish some writing opportunities, some clients, and then say, well, let's really push this door. Let's use this talent. Let's use this wealth of experience that I've built up working with lots of people, empathizing with people, and here we are. Wood Writes Words and is my company, and we're writing for a range of businesses, which is great.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue, that Wood Writes Words. It's easy. It does roll off the tongue. I just butchered it a little bit there, but it's a great name. But yeah, I've noticed from our various conversations that you're a fantastic communicator, and that kind of leads me on to this next question.
Yeah.
How do you feel that your time in education equipped you with the skills and knowledge to thrive in your current role within the marketing industry? Yeah,
brilliant. I mean, I think what you realise within all sectors and with all workplaces is anyone who can be adaptable, flexible, and can respond to what's put in front of them is a real valuable commodity. And obviously within branding, communicating, marketing, that's crucial, because you need to meet the needs of those who you're working with. So for me, I jot down fundamentally there's a real thirst and a desire to learn. And I think within the world of marketing and communication, that's crucial and has served me really well so far. An absolute focus on people and approaching people and relationships with empathy, understanding where people are coming from, what behavior might be telling you, what concerns might actually be underneath the obvious. But then also following that with optimism and energy and enthusiasm for where people can get to. If you translate that from a child in school or a teenager in school, and having that optimism and energy for their future, despite what the obvious might be telling you in terms of behavior and what they might be demonstrating. But actually, if you translate that into a business and you say, well, do you know what? I believe we can take this to the next level. We can communicate this more. We can sell more of your story. We can say exactly what you do. what the problem is, and we can tell your audience how you are the solution to that problem. So that's been really good. I mean, and I think I kind of summarize this idea of communication in finding the right message at the right time and sharing it in the right way. So a couple of examples came to mind actually when you asked that. So the first one would be, I can remember walking down a corridor. So I was quite a lot of pastoral responsibility in this time. So the kids knew that I would be trying to sort out and help in a situation. And there was a student who was quite distressed at the time in the corridor. And there was an argument with a teacher going on. There was another student and there was potentially a bit of a fight going on. Now, at that same time, some teachers had come to get me, and Mr. Wood, can you come and sort this out? Take a deep breath, put down my tea or apple or whatever it was, and right, let's go. As I'm coming in, there's another student who I've built this relationship up. I've been their teacher for a number of years, and they actually have a wonderful student, but he had a lot bubbling under the surface, an awful lot bubbling under the surface, and he would be on occasions he would just explode. And this wonderful, calm, and helpful lad, he could just go. And the reason for that was he had a younger brother who had quite severe disabilities and was in school. And he, as you can imagine, had carried this burden of being the big brother and looking after and protecting and guiding his younger brother, who was brilliant, was in a mainstream school and was thriving.
Yeah.
And I can remember as I was going to sort out this issue with an argument between a teacher and a teacher trying to intervene with two pupils, and then was not being treated well by the two pupils, and it was all kicking off down one end of the corridor. I saw the art in the eyes of this other brilliant pupil who had over time had come to trust me, and I could see that he was about to go. And some other boys had said something horrible to his younger brother, and that was his trigger point. And I can remember just thinking, right, what do I do here? And I think that's a great question, isn't it, actually, for us as marketers, as writers. Okay, what do I do here? And we're going to maybe talk about questions we ask ourselves later on. And I can remember just saying, I looked at him and I said, I've got to go. I need you to go into that science room now. I will be there. Just breathe. And he did. And I went out and I managed to sort of diffuse the other situation and make sure the teacher was okay. And I went back to the other student and I said, first and foremost, just thank you for doing what I asked, because that had meant that I could sort that other situation. I could make that better. How are you? Are you okay? And it really got me thinking about that idea of relationship and that idea of connecting with people. And the only reason he followed my instruction in that moment and I was able to cut through the red mist that had completely reasonably come down was because I had built trust and relationship and understanding. And there was an element of, and I use that, I'm going to use a sort of a marketing word here. I don't like it in a education setting, but I built that authority where there was a sense, okay, Mr. Wood's going to bring something to my situation. He knows me. Yeah. And that was, so I think bringing that kind of optimism, bringing that sense of instinct, bringing those questions into my current role and the clients that I'm working with is you've got to own that and say, actually, that adds value, and that's a good thing.
I think the biggest similarity between the example you've just given there and something from the world of marketing is that you've positioned yourself as a guide. You're the guide. You're helping a person through a problem to get to the solutions, get to the promised land, or whatever you want to call it. You know, you're like, there's a saying, you know, never solve when selling. So if you're writing copy, for instance, if you're trying to sell a product or service in copy, don't jump straight in by trying to solve the problem. Guide people, ask them questions, get them to look within. You touched on what you said there, triggers. You know, you touched on the triggers of people. Now I'm talking in more of a positive sense than the trigger of that young boy. But, you know, you play on triggers and you act as a guide. As soon as you see those triggers come up, good or bad, you act as a guide to get the person from A to Z, be that a bad place or a good place or whatever. You know, it's really interesting, the similarities there. I think the key word there is guide. You know, act as a guide to people. Don't jump in with both. I mean, we were talking about this the other day, how teaching has changed over the last 20 or 30 years. Because 20 or 30 years ago, it might have been kind of a bit physical and break it up, lads, and all this, and, you know, get a grip or whatever, you know, that kind of mentality. Whereas you know, you've got that additional empathy, I feel, and I know that from talking to you. But some of the other examples you've given from your time within education, you know, we haven't got long enough to talk about it today, but I think you're a fantastic guide, and I think that translates into your current role.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. Yeah, and as soon as you said that, I heard a little soundbite from someone I was chatting to, who does a lot of work in workplace culture and helping workplaces to build a culture where people thrive. And again, there's similarities in all that we're saying here. And he said, "All I am is the holder of the right questions." I thought, oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah,
absolutely brilliant. And then I think as a teacher, you very and also obviously as a writer, you realize I don't have all the answers, but I love that through the right questions and the right relationship, we can get somewhere to the right solution.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously, the title of this podcast is The Power of the Question, and asking the right question, which is the $1 million question, I suppose. What is the right question? So why is this so important in your opinion? Why is asking the right question so important to achieving the outcome that you and everybody else wants to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's building on what we've just said. Even though as a person asking the question, you are doing the speaking, but really that's just a way in. To apply the 2 ears, 1 mouth principle, that I want to get the other person talking. I want to hear from them. I want to hear what they are currently thinking. I want to hear about their business. I want to hear about their values and their vision. And I think what that allows in terms of dialogue, it allows you and the person you're speaking to untangle all of the ideas and the buzzing and the late night buzzing and the early morning thoughts that just need some clarification and precision. And questions do that. They did that in the classroom. They still do. And they do that when you're meeting with a client or in other workplace settings. Questions allow you to say, right, I've asked a question, now go, speak, and I'm listening. I think that's really important. And then I think as you speak, and particularly those who are external processors, if you're working with a client who gets to just talk, that's a brilliant way for them also to untangle and settle on what it is they want to communicate, and they want you to help them to communicate. So that first question is, right, I'm going to speak for a very short period of time and I want to hear from you. I think that's really important. And then what that then does, it allows you to build trust and relationship with the person you're speaking with. It reflects investment, it reflects care, empathy, all of those things, which I think is really important.
Just been thinking as you've been giving your answer there. It's a great answer, by the way. And I don't want to be disparaging towards children here, but do you think there's a similarity between a child in a classroom environment and an adult reading some marketing copy that is aimed at trying to get them to buy? So, for example, both people have their guard up, and you have to ask the right questions to lower their resistance. Do you think there is a similarity there?
Oh, without a doubt. And I think it's not a one and done, is it? It's not a one size fits all. It's questions and relationship and authority and expertise and trust built over time. Now, for me, what I would do with businesses would be, right, let's present through a series of blogs, through some case studies. Let's present and let's ask questions of the audience. What is it they need? And let's present what we do. Within education, you're presenting that the whole time. You're saying, right, a great questioning technique for any teachers who are watching is to just respond to any answer given in a classroom absolutely neutrally. So not with, that's great, or just thank you. Kid gives an answer. It might be the first answer they've given ever. Kid is used to always getting great answers or getting the right answer. Well, those kids might not engage in what we call higher order thinking. They might not then start pushing themselves slightly further. So kid gives an answer. Thank you. That's really interesting. Yeah. Anyone else? And it just facilitates, it opens up an explosion of opportunity and creativity rather than shutting it down. And it takes out that sense of preconceived ideas, or as we always tend to do, or we can sometimes tend to do, I should say, come at wanting to hear the answer we want to hear as we ask.
Yeah. No, I love that. So you'd used that example before when we were having another conversation to demonstrate how you could diffuse a situation. I think you said, so basically when there's a room full of kids and they're making loads of noise, I think you used the words thank you, or you asked a question. I'm just trying to remember what the exact story was.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt, That's within the arsenal of a teacher, within the teacher's toolkit. The proximity praise and the ending a sentence with thank you is absolutely great. So yeah, thanking anyone who is. We can either stand at the front of the classroom and you can shout and say, please be quiet, look at me, or you can just start thanking those who are doing it. And before you know it, actually you realize you create a culture where there is optimism, there is hope, there is a need and a desire for people to be in a nice classroom, even in the toughest schools. And thank you, that's brilliant. Waiting here, but thanks ever so much. Thank you here. Brilliant. 2 more people we're waiting for. Okay, right. I want to tell you something exciting, and then you deliver the good stuff, which is great. So yeah, I think non-judgmental questioning. So you're just starting a dialogue. There are no right and wrong answers. And I would use this in if I was asking a personal or a tricky question to a client, and I could see that they were worried about saying the right answer. I think this is completely transferable, what I'm about to say now. I would ask a question in a classroom setting, and then I would scaffold what answering it well looks like. And I would say, right, have a chat with the person next to you. And I'd follow that up with, and on the board, anyone who uses this phrase, I'm going to be absolutely delighted. Now, I wouldn't use that same tone or phrasing with an adult client, of course, but the sentiment would remain. And I would say, we're not sure, but we think it might be this. And I don't think that's an amazing thing for a teenager who's conscious about getting everything right to answer a question in that way. I'm not sure, but we think it might be this. What a risk that is to answer a question in that way. And then you're not talking about outcome, you're talking about, and you're praising the dialogue and you're praising the communication that says, oh, this is my attempt to get my thoughts out. Now, I think with the client, now I'm asking you a question. You might not have all the answers, but what do you think? Mm-hmm. What do you think the answer might be? What if you could? I'm not going to hold you to anything, but are there anything? What's coming into your mind now? What's the first 5 things that come into your mind about who you want to speak to? No wrong answer, no judgment. Keep the dialogue going.
I believe, and I'm trying to remember now, because we're going to break this into various segments depending on the people that you're asking questions of. I think prospects might be one of the people that we're going to focus on. If it's not, we can go into that, because I think that's something that is so important, especially when you're trying to close deals as a writer and trying to get more business. But I'll tell you what, let's circle back and start with the education side of things, because you've given me some great examples already. I want to explore more your perspective of working in education, and specifically what you found to be the most effective questions to ask children and young people, and why those questions were so effective. And by the way, this segment isn't so much aimed at fellow educators as it is at parents, because I'm sure there are going to be 1 or 2 parents watching this who aren't sure how to connect with their children at times. So yeah, Matthew, what were some of the most effective questions that you found in your time as an educator to elicit the desired response?
Yeah, I think open questions are key, non-judgmental questions. What do you think? Why do you think that?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example? And I think it just facilitates the opportunity to talk, and actually not even responding with an opinion yourself, because within education and anyone who you're working with, I would say in a position of offering guidance, they are we become masters of people pleasing, don't we? What answer are they expecting? What answer are they kind of leading me to? So I would say open questions, dialogue, non-judgmental things. Now, if you're talking about teenager, I don't have to think too far back to think the ridiculous opinions that I repeated from what my friends might have thought, or influence might have said to me. I didn't really even think that. I just said it, and we can easily shut down dialogue by trying to fix, by trying to offer an alternative viewpoint. Actually, the answers, the dialogue is all part of landing somewhere landing somewhere on an idea or a framework of of what you might think about something.
Yeah, I think that those two questions that you used at the start of your answer are perfect precursors to what you would ask an adult. So what do you think and why do you think that? It's more nuanced when you ask an adult that question, those questions. But they are good precursors because they're open-ended, which, as we've covered, is perfect for when you're dealing with anybody, rather than asking a question that lends itself to a yes or no answer. But they also get people thinking. I suppose there's probably some psychology out there that says, if people are asked those sorts of questions as children and young people, it keeps them on the straight and narrow. It gets them internalizing. It makes them introspective. And that can translate so well to your mentality as an adult, where you are more open to dialogue. I ask a lot of questions of people, but I'm open to people asking questions of me because I've grown up in that environment. And some of my best ever teachers
as well, I think.
Keeps you curious. That's exactly the word, actually. Yeah, inquisitive and curious. You don't get given the answers from a young age, but you look within. And I honestly believe it. I mean, I'm going quite deep here, but I really believe it helps with your problem-solving ability as well, because you're not being given the answers, but you're being asked the questions to get you into a position to find the answers. And actually, as writers selling to people, that's what we should be doing. We shouldn't be going to people and saying, I think you need to do 4 blog posts a month, or I think you need 10 new landing pages. Ask them, find out, So I think those are some great examples that you've given there.
Nice.
And I think that we can segue nicely into your current role of freelance marketer. We'll come on to the copy in a second, but I want to stick with prospects because I think there's a natural kind of synergy there between what you've just said about your conversations with children, how you would approach a conversation with a potential client. So when you're talking to a prospect or somebody who's a warm lead, let's say, what have you found to be some of the most effective questions to, again, elicit the response you're looking for?
Yeah, I think it's asking people. I saw a great post from my friends. I will make reference to it because it was a lovely bit of phrasing he used. Phil Shortland on LinkedIn, and he did a post recently that just said about starting at the end, which is actually really is great copy because it's the simple explained simply. So asking what are we wanting? What are you wanting to do? Who are you wanting to speak to? Where do we want to get to? If you were starting a presentation, you would think, right, what's my key message? Okay, what's going to deliver that message? So asking a client, what is it that you want to deliver? Who is it that you want to speak to? Now, what that looks like and where you actually end up may differ somewhat, but starting at the end is a really valuable thing. I think that really helps. I think that really helps. Now, within that, I think there's some really important questions that you can ask that facilitate the building of a good relationship. So tell me about you. Tell me about your business.
Yeah.
What is it that you offer? It could be that a client has never defined or communicated their brilliance even to themselves or in that setting, particularly if it's a small or medium enterprise. So tell me what problem you solve. Now, in the right setting, that's a challenging and encouraging question all in one. Because it's causing them to think, oh, okay. So, for example, as a writer, or as you as a writer or marketer, Neil, if someone says, "Well, why should I hire you?" Well, immediately like, "Oh, blimey, I've got to think about this." So they're questions that I think, with the right interpersonal skills and the right trust and relationship built up, already starts adding value to that client, and they show that you're invested and interested in exactly what their offer is. And then what that then allows you to do is start defining what you might gently add in to, I can see that you're doing this. And have you thought that actually you're offering this? And of course, as a guide in that conversation, if you are the holder of the right questions, you want to facilitate and then add in your expertise at the right time without presenting yourself as the person with all of the answers. Whilst you, of course, you will provide some. So I think that's really important. And then when you're speaking to your client, helping you to gain clarification of what you think they might need, and therefore any proposal for work as you and then ultimately paying for your service. Establishing who's your ideal client, why is this important, why is what you do important, what's your audience, what have you done before, what are their needs, and establishing what information have they already gathered. You're sharing the expertise, you're building expertise, but you're also building that relationship. And as freelance copywriters and content writers, we should become part of someone's team, and they should feel great. I've got a new team member who's invested in what I'm doing. Then between you in that collaboration, again, you get somewhere closer to offering them the right words, right time, shared in the right way, and it builds that confidence in all that you can bring.
Yeah, some great examples there. I like to ask emotionally driven questions as well. So things like, what emotions do your ideal customers or ideal clients feel when they look at your business? And some people will be quite flippant and say they don't because the website's shit, So you kind of think, okay, well, that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to bring it to life a bit more. But quite often they'll say they feel this and this and this. And that gives you such a clear indicator about the tone of voice that you should use, the types of sentences, the type of lexis, etc. I also like to ask emotionally led questions in relation to me. So what I'll say is, what was the biggest reason you had for wanting to work with me? Because it just reminds them a little bit. Some people can really have their guard up, as I said before, and not be sure about investing in you. I don't want to pay money for something I could do myself. By the way, don't work with those type of clients, generally speaking, but you can't always read people's minds. If they were thinking that, then you can say, what were the biggest reasons you had for wanting to work with me, or what drew you to wanting to work with me? That's from a sales training course that I went on in Birmingham recently. But it can be a great way to get people back on side if you can sense them drifting a little bit, because when you're on a call of that nature and you're asking for, hundreds or potentially thousands of pounds a month, then it's natural that people will have their guard up. That's just basic human psychology. But I think, as I said before, lowering the resistance, asking the right questions, 5 W's and an H. Again, that's another framework from the training course that I went on, but you use loads of examples there. What results would you need to see within the first 6 to 12 months for this to be the best investment you ever made? What drew you to working with me? As you said there, what's your business about? What do your ideal clients look like? What emotions do they feel when they look at your business? What are their interests? What are their biggest fears? And what are their biggest desires? All that kind of stuff. What are their triggers? Some brilliant examples there. And I think that, again, the things that you ask children are great precursors to it. I know I've said it before, but I really believe that, within copy as well. So if we look at copy, I don't want to go too much into this because I feel like I'm going to ask you about loads of different types of audiences, and the core questions kind of remain the same, but I'm curious to know within your copy, what are some questions that you have asked in the past that will really get people thinking and go, I wasn't really sure about this product or service, but now I'm ready to buy. What are some examples of questions that you would typically ask in that setting?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really good. And I think in terms of questions and within your copy, it's clearly, we learned it at school when we were students ourselves. It's a rhetorical device that draws people in and it gets people thinking. And I've been thinking about that in a couple of ways. It's almost like in music, there's like a call and a response. And then there's this balance between, talking to the client and you, and we obviously we want to address them directly in an active voice and all of those things. But then it also gets to a point where there's but we will solve that and we will do that for you. And there's almost an analogy or a metaphor of a dance between you need this and we do that for you, and the two come together. And I think the question answer does that nicely. So I think for a website I was writing for that provided entertainment and wedding services, it was lots of have you ever, can you imagine, what if you could? And it was all about the idea of taking the stress away and allowing them to focus on the emotion, like you said, of the perfect day. So it's that type of question, and then coming in with that second part of the response or the next part of the dance that says, and guess what, we do that.
Love that.
So, that'd be my answer to that.
What if you could? I absolutely love that. And it ties in a little bit with a couple of things. The first thing is the example you gave earlier on about starting from the ideal point and working backwards, or starting at the end and working back. And there's the bridge formula, which is the other part. So it's like, here's where here's where you want to be, and here's how you're going to get there. I don't always feel I love the pain agitate solution framework. It is a great framework. I don't always think you need it. It depends on the industry. It depends on the type of person. You don't always have to go in with a problem, I don't think. For example, if you're selling shaving foam or you're writing blogs about shaving foam, you might touch on some pain points, literal pain points. But sometimes it can be about the kind of desire. Imagine a world where you could just glide across your face and it's all smooth and everything. I obviously need it a little bit at the moment, but it's that kind of thing. It doesn't always have to be.
Without a doubt. If you were selling a holiday, just imagine that there's no beach, there's no sun lounges, the pool's rammed. Don't worry. Now it's like, whoa, I'm not there. I want to be taken away to the good point.
I'm not trying to focus on the negative. I want to know what you're selling me. But with the holiday, it's a great example because you start you definitely want to start at the ending there. Picture this. You're on a beach with a pina colada. I can't think of much else because I haven't got much of an imagination this morning. But let's just say beach with a pina colada and something like in Hawaii or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
You start. Yeah, you start
from the end. I love that.
Yeah,
that's great.
So I think we've covered a lot of these questions, but this is the main one actually that I want to talk about because it's all well and good talking about what we would ask other people, but the most fundamental thing I think before we even get to that point is what we ask ourselves, the questions we ask ourselves. So I can tell you from my experience that some of the most effective questions I've ever asked myself would be, what does an ideal client look like? What are my core values? And the most impossible question to answer, what do I want from life? I've had a hard time answering that one. But Matthew, I'm curious to know, what questions do you typically ask yourself to ensure that you're living your best life personally and professionally?
So it's a really, really great question. And I just going back to what you said about you've had a tough time answering that last one. And I think it's probably indicative of the fact that there is no answer, or it's an evolving answer or a growing answer. And a friend once said to me about opportunities that arise and things that you thought were going to happen and then didn't come through. And I said, it just sometimes feels like a false dawn. And he said to me, Matt, it's not that. Actually, these are progressive dawns. I thought that's amazing. That's a beautiful image of actually things broadening and widening and deepening at the same time, but opportunities arising that you just didn't know where you were going to end up, and circumstance and whatever acting on what you fancy at that time or what you want to do. Do you know what? We don't know where we're going to end up. So, and I think having made a career transition and started a new venture and having taken the step to start a business and write for clients and put yourself out there, you ask these questions. What's my identity? Am I just a teacher? Actually, when I was a teacher, things were a lot easier in many ways. So I think these are really, really important questions. And I think you need to, just as you would invest in your business, as well as the service you're providing, the background parts of your business, I think you need to continue investing in you, because everything rises and falls in effect on how well you do. So it's crucial that you ask these questions. I know that you spoke to Rachel Barker a few months ago. A brilliant post from her, which I really enjoyed. And she talked about the two whys, and she talked about the personal why and the professional why. And I think that was just brilliantly described. So for me, one of the absolute beautiful things currently is that I'm able to balance some of my family life in a new way in this season, which is great. So I've been involved in a couple of school trips since the turn of the year, not as a teacher, but as a parent. And what an amazing opportunity to say yes to something I wouldn't have been able to say yes to before. So I think for me, one of my values is getting that balance right, holistically saying, right, okay, I love doing things well. I don't want that to creep into perfectionism, as is a real trapping for anyone in education. But I do want to do things really, really well, and that includes personal life. That includes being a dad.
Yeah.
That includes any writing and client work that I'm doing. I want everyone to get the best deal from me.
You used the word,
which I think is really important. Yeah.
I was just going to say, you used the word perfection there, and I think it's a perfect segue into this question I've had in my head as you were talking there.
Yeah.
Do you think that, well, it's not really a question, it's more of just an observation, actually, because I think that when people become freelancers or move careers, do anything in life, they assume that if they write the questions down at the beginning and answer all of those questions, that they'll have the perfect life, they'll have the perfect plan, they'll always know what they're doing at all times. But you're asking questions every day of your life. It's not like you ask a series of questions to yourself and there you go, it's like a light bulb moment and you have all the answers and you can go and do it. Like as business owners, we are asking questions every single day and you're always learning. But guess what? That's the intrigue of life. That's what makes it so brilliant.
Definitely. Absolutely. And it's a fallacy to say that there's any end point in that regard, but it's definitely a fallacy to say that there's some kind of utopia that we're gonna land in where we get to have all the fulfillment of working hard and solving solutions, yet none of the hard work and kind of wrestling with ideas and concepts that come with it. It's all one and the same. And actually, that's the thing those are the things to embrace and enjoy because they cause us to grow. For me, I think in terms of the business, like the idea, the chance to be creative, the chance to take a risk, but to at the same time and not shy away from the fact to manage that risk against some sensible decisions. And all of this is strategizing. All of this is exciting and creative, and that's been the real joy of building Wood Writes Words, because I've been able to say, right, okay, this is mine. This is what I can do for you. And then when I've done that, then no, okay, this is what I do. And that's been brilliant to have that side of that element of ownership. But alongside that, what's crucial from a well-being point of view is that we cannot allow tangible, measurable financial success to form the foundation of our sense of self-worth. Because even when it's achieved, even when that's achieved, then I would argue that there continues to be a degree of emptiness of, well, what about the next? What about the next thing? What about the next thing? It's so important that we are satisfied with a job well done. We don't settle for second best. We don't settle for anything other than our best, but a satisfaction in wow, that was good. This has been good. And then use that as a springboard onto the next thing rather than a relentless drive. Because we've all been in that position where you think, actually, I'm achieving loads here, but I'm not really enjoying it. And I think that's something we need. That would be the answer to my question. I want to enjoy this next part more and more.
Yeah, no, I love that answer, and I fully agree. I was going to plug a book, but I think my mum would like me not to swear as much on these podcasts, and you might have people watching who don't like swearing. So I'm going to plug this book, but you'll probably have heard of it or may even have read it. It's Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a You Know What. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before. It actually scores out the U, so it's just F star and then the other two letters, which most people can work out. He's brilliant, and he touches on that exact idea that you've just expressed of, in the capitalist world we live in today, when is anything ever enough? And we can constantly, I'll look at it and I'll say, right, I want this much revenue this year. And if I don't hit that target, am I going to be disappointed? No. Am I going to beat myself up about it? No, because I've got to look at the things that I do have. There's a lot of freelancers out there who would love to be in my position. I'd love to be in other freelancers' positions, but not so much so that I would disregard what I've achieved. And it's not always just about money or number of clients. It's about the people you meet on the way. People like you and Rachel, who you mentioned before. I've met loads of other great people via LinkedIn and networking events and feeling fulfilled spiritually as well. But the key thing is to keep asking yourself these questions. It's quite ironic that I talked about resistance to questions and how resistant some people can be. I've been resistant to my own questions at times. When I've asked it internally, I've thought, I don't really want to I don't want to answer it because it makes me feel uncomfortable. But feeling uncomfortable is where the magic happens. That's where you grow as a person, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes it reflects that there's something to reconcile, so that you're not looking back at something from your, from your previous working life where you say, well, okay, I don't talk about that. So no, I want to reconcile with that and say, I'm bringing that experience into the new. I think that's crucial. And certainly, I have an absolute desire and drive to be the best I can be. As a kid, I would go in my garden and I would do kick-ups in the garden with a football until I could do 500 of them. And because I want to be great and people want to be great. And I think that's really good. And I think you can shy away from that. That's not great. Or you can say, I'm not, unless I'm the best ultimately, or what I deem to be perfect, then similarly, that can be just as unhealthy. Embracing the opportunity to push yourself, embracing the opportunity to really drive forward. Like I've done this, in throughout this year, is say, right, do you know what? I can do this for clients, and when I do it, they're going to be really pleased, and they have been, and that's brilliant. But that doesn't define me. Doesn't define me. And I think that's the key to stay in the present. Get on school trips.
I'm going to get very subjective here and a little bit deep, but I think you need to ask yourself, what does good look like? Or what do good and bad look like? What is best? What is worst? There's an amazing clip of Marlon Brando speaking about this. The interviewer asks him, it's from later in his life, I think it's from about the 1980s or something like that.
Yeah.
And she asks him, are you the best actor of all time? And he said, I really struggle with words like that. I'm paraphrasing here, but he says words to the effect of, why do people always look at it today if you're the best, you're the worst, you're the winner, you're the loser, you're good, you're bad? He said, I don't like to look at things that way. He said, everybody offers value in their own way. Everybody in the world has something to offer. And that's a massive question that you need to ask yourself, like, what does good and bad look like? Because really what you think bad looks like in reality isn't that bad a lot of the time. You can be doing really well with business, but you're just surrounding yourself maybe with people who are in a certain socioeconomic position, or I don't know, people who you perceive as being at a certain spiritual position in their life, or whatever it may be. And all you're doing is comparing, and then you're saying, well, they're better than me or they're worse than me. No one is better or worse than anybody. We have to remember that. And I think asking yourself that question, what the hell am I going on about sometimes? That sounds quite self-critical, but it is important when you're trying to look after yourself to say, what am I really getting so upset about here? You can get some bad feedback from a client. That's a great example. Yeah. I've been lucky enough that it hasn't happened that often, but it has happened to me a couple of times when I've been a freelancer, and I've felt like that big at times. But then I ask myself, what does this really mean? What will I think of this when I'm 50? Will I even remember this? No, I won't. So, these are the kinds of questions to ask yourself. So I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but I thought that Marlon Brando quote was really, worth mentioning, and people should go and check it out, because he can deliver it a little better than I can, because that's kind of his job. But it's a brilliant example. So on the subject of books, just before we wrap it up, I've just plugged one there from Mark Manson. Another book that I want to plug is Content Fortress. I cannot remember the name of the author. It's not here. It's a guy called Martin. I've just started reading it. It's a brilliant book. So if anyone hasn't read that, go and check it out, because it focuses on questions like, I've touched on a couple of them in the podcast. What does my ideal client look like? What does the enemy look like? I shouldn't say the enemy, but what does a bad client look like? What are my values? What do I want to achieve with my business, etc. And it talks about the importance of writing content, actually, which deters people that you don't want to work with. So I'm going to start doing that on my website very soon, because I need to update it. Have you got any books, Matthew, that you recommend, or anything that you've read recently?
Well, I was really interested in that one when you mentioned it before. I think if you were going to read a crossover educational book, then there's a pedagogy teaching book that's got gained a lot of traction over the years. It's something called Teach Like a Champion by Doug Lemov, and he actually is he's applied coaching principles into education. So you can imagine how that idea of bringing people forward, key messaging, questioning in the right time, building culture. I think there's a lot of richness in something like that.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so Matthew, what an amazing conversation. You know, I think we covered so many different areas, and hopefully people are inspired by what we had to say. So where can people find you if they want to chat about any of the topics we've discussed in this podcast, or just generally find out more about you?
Yeah, primarily on LinkedIn, which would be find me by searching for Matthew Wood or Wood Writes Words, and then on my website woodwriteswords.co.uk, and my email's on there as well. So yeah, me delighted to chat to anybody.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks so much, Matthew.
Thanks, Neil.